The voicemail was still on my phone. I had listened to it 11 times. Not because I needed to hear it again. Not because I had forgotten what my son said, but because there was something in his voice, the way it dropped at the end, the way he almost whispered, "Mom, please," that I kept hoping would sound different if I played it one more time. That maybe I had misread him. That maybe I had been wrong. I was not wrong. Let me go back to the beginning. Because that is the only way any of this makes sense. My name is Marvella. I am 64 years old. I live in the same house I have lived in for 31 years, a 2-story colonial on a quiet street in Greensboro, North Carolina. My husband Leonard bought this house when our son was 3 years old. Leonard passed in 2019, pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to gone. He left me the house, a modest life insurance policy, and a piece of paper in his desk drawer that said, in his handwriting, "Don't let anyone rush you into anything." I did not understand what that meant at the time. I do now. My son is 31. He works in commercial real estate. He is smart, genuinely smart, and I was proud of that for a long time. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how to walk into a room and make everyone feel like he had come specifically to see them. I used to watch him at family gatherings and think, Leonard would have loved this. He would have put his hand on my shoulder and said, "That boy is going places." He did go places. He just did not always take me with him. He met his wife at a conference in Charlotte 4 years ago. She is in finance. Her family is from Connecticut. Old money in the way that people from old money don't like to acknowledge. They visited us once, early on, when things were still warm and hopeful. Her mother sat in my living room and looked at everything very carefully without ever saying a word about any of it, the way you look at something when you are calculating its value. I noticed. I did not say anything. I was trying to be gracious. The wedding was last October, a Saturday. The venue was a restored plantation estate outside of Raleigh. My son's wife had chosen it, and I had swallowed my feelings about that choice the way I had swallowed a lot of feelings by then. I had bought a dress in dusty rose because my son had told me to avoid anything that might clash with the wedding colors. I had paid for my own alterations, my own hotel room, my own flight back from my sisters in Atlanta, that I cut short to make sure I had time to rest before the weekend. I arrived at the venue Friday evening for the rehearsal dinner. My son met me in the parking lot, not to hug me, to tell me where I was and was not permitted to go. He said it kindly. That was the thing about him. He always said it kindly. "Mom, the rehearsal dinner tonight is just immediate family and the wedding party. You're not, we thought it would be better if you just rested tonight. Dinner is at 7. There's a great barbecue place about 2 miles down the road." I stood there with my overnight bag over my shoulder, and I looked at my son's face and I thought, when did this happen? When did I become the person you arrange around? I said, "Okay." I got back in my rental car. I drove to the barbecue place. I ate alone at a table near the window. And I watched families come in and out, and I thought about Leonard. And I did not cry. I was saving that for later. The wedding itself was beautiful, if I am being honest. The ceremony was at 4 in the afternoon, golden light coming through the old oak trees, white chairs in perfect rows. I was seated in the 3rd row, not the 1st. I was told gently that the front row was reserved for the bride's immediate family and that they were a large group. I counted 6 people in that front row. My son's wife's parents, her 2 brothers, her grandmother, and 1 aunt. I sat in the 3rd row next to a cousin I had not seen in 11 years, and I watched my son stand at the end of that aisle, and I thought, he looks so happy. I want him to be happy. I genuinely do. I want to be clear about that. This is not a story about a mother who resented her son's happiness. I wanted every good thing for him. I still do. But there is a difference between wanting good things for your child and accepting that you yourself have become invisible to them. I was learning that difference, slowly, in real time. The reception was in a great hall with string lights and a jazz quartet, and past appetizers that I did not eat because by that point my stomach had closed itself. I found my table 11 near the back, next to the audio equipment, and I sat down and I smiled at the people around me, and I made conversation about the weather and the centerpieces and how far everyone had driven. At 8:15, my daughter-in-law came to my table. I want to be careful here. I want to be precise. Because what happened next is the thing I have replayed more than any other moment, more than the voicemail, more than anything. She crouched down next to my chair so that we were eye level. She had a champagne glass in her hand. She was smiling. The way people smile when they are delivering news they have decided in advance is not negotiable. She said, "Marvella, we need to talk about something. Some of our guests have mentioned feeling a little, I don't know how to say this, a little uncomfortable. I think it might be easier for everyone if you headed back to the hotel after dinner. We're moving into the dancing portion and it's going to get pretty loud, and I just want to make sure you're comfortable." I looked at her. I looked at the champagne glass. I looked at the jazz quartet playing something slow and lovely, 20 feet away. I said, "Are you asking me to leave my son's wedding?" She kept smiling. "I'm just thinking about your comfort." I did not make a scene. I want you to know that. I stood up. I folded my napkin and placed it on the table. I picked up my purse. I went to find my son. He was near the bar with a group of his college friends. He saw my face before I said a word. He stepped away from the group and came to me, and I told him, quietly, what his wife had said. There was a pause. It was not a long pause. Maybe 4 seconds. He said, "Mom, this is her day too. Can you not make this a thing right now?" I heard the music. I heard the laughter behind us. I heard Leonard's voice somewhere in the back of my head saying, "Don't let anyone rush you." I said, "Okay." I got my coat from the coat check. I walked out through the main entrance. I sat in my rental car for a few minutes in the dark, and I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. And then I drove back to the hotel, and I sat on the edge of the bed in my dusty rose dress, and I thought about the house. Because that was the other thing that had been building. That was the thread that connected everything, that I had not let myself look at directly until that night. 6 weeks before the wedding, my son had called me to talk about the house. Not casually. He had prepared. He had numbers. He told me that property values in my neighborhood had increased significantly over the past 5 years, which was true, and that I was sitting on an asset worth considerably more than I probably realized. He mentioned that he and his wife had been talking to some investors. He said it could be a very smart move to sell now, before the market softened. He said he could connect me with a real estate attorney he trusted. I told him I was not interested in selling. He said he understood, but would I at least think about it? I said I would think about it. What I did not tell him was that I had already spoken to my own attorney, my friend Dolly. We went to church together for 20 years. Her son-in-law is a real estate lawyer in Durham. Had connected me with someone who explained exactly what my house was worth, and exactly what my rights were, and exactly what my rights were, and exactly what it would mean to sign anything over to anyone. I had that conversation 3 weeks before the wedding. I had gone in alone, sat down, and listened for 2 hours, and then I had asked questions, and I had left with a folder of information that I put in the fireproof safe under my bed. I had not told my son about that meeting. I thought about all of that on the edge of the hotel bed. I took off my earrings. I set them on the nightstand. I did not cry. Not yet. The next morning was a Sunday. I had a 9 a.m. flight back to Greensboro. I was in the hotel lobby at 7:15, waiting for the shuttle, when my phone rang. It was my son. He said good morning. He said he was sorry he had not had more time to talk with me at the reception. He said he hoped I understood, and then, approximately 45 seconds into the call, he said, "Mum, I actually wanted to ask you something." My wife and I have been talking, and we think the timing is really right. We have some investors ready to move, and if you wanted to go ahead with the house, we could have something drafted really quickly. I know you said you'd think about it. Have you had time to think? The lobby was quiet. A family near the door was loading luggage onto a cart. The shuttle driver was talking to someone at the front desk. I thought about the night before, table 11, the coat check. Can you just not make this a thing? I said, I have thought about it. He waited. I said, the house is not for sale. There was silence on the line, not the surprised kind, the calculated kind, the kind that tells you this was not the expected answer, and the person on the other end is now rerouting. He said, Mum, I don't think you fully understand what you'd be walking away from financially. We're talking about, I said, I understand exactly what I would be walking away from. Another pause. He said, did someone tell you something? Did Aunt Charlene say something to you? My sister Charlene, who had been warning me since the spring, who had sat across from me at her kitchen table in Atlanta and said, plain as anything, baby, they want that house. I had not wanted to believe her. I had said she was reading too much into things. I had said my son loved me. I said to my son, this is not about Charlene, this is about me. I am not selling the house. He said, Mom, just that, just my name, in a tone that sat somewhere between disappointment and something harder. I said, have a wonderful honeymoon. I hung up. The shuttle came. I loaded my bag. I flew home to Greensboro, and I walked into my house. My house. Leonard's house. The house with the marks on the doorframe where we measured our son every birthday until he was 16 and told us to stop. And I stood in the kitchen and I finally cried. Not because I was sad exactly, because something had been confirmed that I had been hoping was not true, because grief and clarity sometimes arrive together. I called Dolly that afternoon. I told her everything, the rehearsal dinner, the table, what my daughter-in-law had said, the call in the lobby. Dolly listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I love about her. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, did you talk to your attorney yet about making sure everything is properly documented? Not just the verbal stuff, the ownership, the beneficiary designations, all of it? I told her I had the folder. I told her about the meeting in September. She said, good, but you need to go back. You need to make sure there's nothing they can challenge later, that the title is clean, that your will reflects what you actually want, that there are no gaps. I made an appointment for the following Tuesday. What I learned in that appointment changed things for me, not because anything was wrong. The house was mine, clear and free. No liens, no co-ownership. Leonard had made sure of that. But my attorney explained something I had not fully considered, that there are people who look for gaps. Small ambiguities, informal promises, emails where you said I'd been thinking about it that can be used later to suggest an intent that was never there. She told me about cases she had seen, about families, about houses. She said, the best protection is documentation. Your intent in writing, notarized, updated. We spent an hour updating my will. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. I had a letter drafted, not aggressive, not accusatory, simply factual, that stated clearly that I had never committed verbally or in writing to selling, transferring, or co-signing any property, and that any future decisions of that nature would be made solely by me. In consultation with my legal counsel, I did not send that letter to my son. I gave a copy to my attorney, a copy to Dolly, and a copy to my sister Charlene. I put the original in the fireproof safe. And then I waited. The voicemail came 3 weeks later. My son's voice, soft and careful, Mum. I know things have been a little tense. I miss you. I wanted to say I'm sorry about the wedding. I don't think we handled some things very well. I'd like to talk, if you're open to it. Not about the house, just to talk. I miss you. Okay. I love you. Call me back. I listened to it 11 times. The 12th time, I sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and I thought about what I actually wanted. Not what I was supposed to want. Not what would look good or make peace or smooth things over. What I, Marvella, 64 years old, still living in the house where I raised my son and buried my husband. What I actually wanted. I wanted my son back. The one from before whatever this was. The one who used to call me on Tuesday evenings just to check in. The one who cried at his father's funeral and let me hold him in the parking lot after, both of us leaning against the car. I also knew that I could not have that back by pretending the other things had not happened. So I called him. I waited until Thursday. When I felt steady, I made a fresh pot of coffee. I sat at the table. I dialed. He answered on the second ring. I said, "I got your voicemail." He said, "Mom." Just that, with something in it that might have been relief. I said, "I want to talk, but I need you to understand something first. This house is mine. It will remain mine for as long as I choose to stay in it. When I am gone, it will go where I have decided it will go, and that decision has been made and documented, and it is not going to change because of any conversation we have. Is that clear?" There was a pause. He said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, then tell me how you've been." We talked for an hour and a half. It was not easy. It was not the Tuesday evening calls from before. But it was real. And real was something. I have not forgiven everything. I am not sure I believe in that kind of fast forgiveness. The kind that asks you to set down something heavy before you have had a chance to understand its full weight. I am still understanding. What I know is this. I walked into my son's wedding, and I walked out of it, and what came after showed me exactly where I stood in a way that nothing else could have. And the house that Leonard bought, the house where my son drew on the kitchen walls when he was 4 and thought I did not notice, the house where I have lived for 31 years. The house is mine. It will stay mine. Not out of spite. Not to punish anyone. Because some things are not for sale. Because some things you hold on to. Not because you are afraid of letting go, but because letting go would mean letting go of the only solid ground you have left. Leonard wrote, "Don't let anyone rush you on a piece of paper and put it in his desk drawer," and I did not know what he meant then. I know now. I think maybe he did too.